Hello everyone. Welcome to our first TPS Skills video. I'm Dr. Stacy Graham with the Teaching with Primary Sources program at Middle Tennessee State University, program of the Library of Congress. In this brief video, I will be walking you through a close reading of a text so that you can get ideas of how to approach text-based primary sources yourself. The text we'll be looking at today is an excerpt from How the Other Half Lives by Jacob Riis. This book was published in 1890 and is considered a classic of muckraking journalism. Riis's purpose was to expose the harsh living conditions of the poor immigrant population in New York City and to influence the passage of laws and public services to help them. This text excerpt focuses on the rag pickers in an area of an Italian ghetto known as Bottle Alley. So as you can see on this worksheet, the text here on the left is accompanied by notes here on the right that we've written in the margins to help explain certain points in the text. When a note helps you explain what you're reading, that means it provides context. It's not something you as a student are already expected to know beforehand. These notes are meant to answer questions you might be wondering to yourself while you're reading. It's good, however, the first time to just read the text itself through first and then go back and reread it, adding the notes, following the arrows, like this. Bottle Alley is around the corner in Baxter Street, but it is a fair specimen of its kind wherever found. So the note says, Baxter Street on the Lower East Side is 1 block west of Mulberry Street, which was made famous by one of Riis's photographs that you can explore in this blog article. So here's the famous photograph of Mulberry Street. And you can actually go to a map that was made at that time. And you can see here where Mulberry Street and Baxter Street are right 1 block away from each other in the same neighborhood, this Italian neighborhood of Manhattan. When you zoom out, you can see the island right there. And you can also compare that in modern Google Maps. They're still there. So here's Baxter Street, and here's Mulberry Street. Of course, a lot of the tenement houses have been replaced by public buildings and this park, and part of this Italian neighborhood has actually become part of Chinatown. So that shows different immigration patterns. Back to the text. So look into any of these houses, everywhere the same piles of rags, of malodorous bones, and musty paper, all of which have the sanitary police flatter themselves they have banished to the dumps in the warehouses. So Riis doesn't explain what rag pickers are because I think he assumes that his audience already knows. So I explain it here in this marginal note. Rag pickers were self-employed people who collected trash on the streets and sold it to middlemen who then made a profit selling it to factories and other people that would then reuse these various materials. Before the advent of modern sanitation in cities, this was one way the urban population tried to control the pileup of waste in the slums. The most common materials mentioned as trash that these rag pickers collected were rags, bones, and paper. Because remember, this is before the age of plastic. Where do you think these scraps came from? And what do you think they could be reused as? The note then goes on to include 4 separate images of rag pickers, the first 2 of which were taken by Riis himself to accompany this part of the text in his book. So I'm just going to show you one of those right now. And you can see here you have 2 little girls living in Baxter Street. You can see the piles of rags just lining this little alley here, and the closeness of the houses and the tenements and in the area where they live. And one of these other images by a different journalist at the time who created this drawing where you can see people picking up rags and putting them in bags in this tenement area off Mulberry Street. So you can get a sense of kind of the packed quarters in which these people lived. Back to the text. Here is a flat of parlor and 2 pitch dark coops called bedrooms. Truly the bed is all there is room for. The family tea kettle is on the stove, doing duty for the time being as a wash boiler. By night, it will have returned to its proper use again, a practical illustration of how poverty in the Bend makes both ends meet. 1, 2, 3 beds are there, if the old boxes and heaps of foul straw can be called by that name. A broken stove with crazy pipe from which the smoke leaks at every joint. A table of rough boards propped up on boxes, piles of rubbish in the corner. So the note says, even rag pickers could not control the piles of rubbish that still accumulated in these poor tenement dwellings. The closeness and smell are appalling. So Riis is very clearly trying to make this as vivid as he can for his readers. How many people sleep here? The woman with the red bandana shakes her head sullenly, but the bare-legged girl with the bright face counts on her fingers. 5, 6. So the red bandana marks an immigrant woman, probably Italian, who would have been considered a peasant in the old country. And it's interesting that the child responds instead of the mother. This might hint that the mother does not speak English, which was common for Italian immigrants at that time. It could also hint that the mother was suspicious of whoever it was interviewing them. 6, sir. 6 grown people and 5 children. I have no idea why adults and children would be counted separately. Only 5, she says with a smile, swathing the little one on her lap in its cruel bandage. There is another in the cradle, actually a cradle. So the little girl is very proud to say only 5, as if 5 were a small number of children to actually have within a family. And how much the rent? The interviewer asks. 9.5. And please, sir, he won't put the paper on. He is the landlord. The paper hangs in musty shreds on the wall. So I looked up an online historical currency converter, and I found one that would go back all the way to 1889 and calculate that $9.50 back then would equal roughly $267 today. Now, $267 sounds really cheap, especially for Manhattan, but keep in mind that this is basically a studio apartment with a few closets attached to it, and it's filthy, and it's in one of the worst neighborhoods in the city. So that would have meant something to the audience at the time. Well, now it's your turn to practice this skill on the second page of the worksheet. Remember, the skill of close reading, like so many historical thinking skills, involves asking questions of your text. What questions can you think of that would help you understand better what you're reading? Well, thanks for joining me. Bye.